in his basement.
Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Tim in Green Bay here to talk some Packers as it's officially combine season with the NFL scouting combine getting cranked up. I guess tomorrow, technically, right, Tim? I think people were showing up today. Tomorrow, they're going to get a little more information on them. Probably, I don't know, I would say interviews, team interviews, things like that. I know we got the schedule we've went over a couple times, but it's here, man. We're about to get a ton of information, and it's officially RAS season as well.
That's right. And in other words, it's time to get ready to go, right?
Get ready to go.
That's right, boys. We made it. We made it to the next stage here, the next step. Any day now, too. Probably within the next 2 to 5 days, we should hear about restructures if the Packers choose to restructure any deals. You guys know we've been pretty vocal. We've got, I don't know, several of them identified that we think could potentially be restructured. Rashawn Gary, Jaire Alexander, Jordan Love, Elton Jenkins, Xavier McKinney, Kenny Clark, and Josh Jacobs. Wouldn't be surprised if a few of those got restructured. Although the Packers are in a situation, Tim, where they don't have to do it, I think it would make sense to try to shave $1 million or $2 million off of the cap and roll that over to next year. Might as well go ahead and do that if you feel good about these guys that you want to keep them around it. Jaire's a whole different situation, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you got to make the deal work for him, and you got to make it work for the team as well. And I think there's a chance they don't touch the deal at all. But from the get-go, we talked about 50-50 chance of him being back. And the one thing I felt really comfortable with, if he did come back, I think it would get restructured a touch. That doesn't mean a pay cut necessarily, but it would free up some cap for sure. But I think that's what's around the corner here in the next couple of days, though, too.
I would agree. It's that time of year, right? And with Jai, we got to just let this kind of play out. We'll see what happens. I'm still with you. I'm in that 50-50 camp right now. Yeah.
AFAM in the chat said it's thickness test season. There you go, man.
Yes, sir. The Underwear Olympics, right?
That's exactly right. I was trying to find the appropriate way of saying it there, Tim, but you took the words out of my mouth.
Thick.
Let's jump into Twitter real quick and kind of see what's going on around the league and around Packers Twitter. Pro Football Talk had put this tweet out, and everybody pretty much across Twitter. NFL to consider changes to the kickoff, including touchbacks moving to the 35-yard line. So, Tim, last year they went to the 30, right? Or was it or was it the 25? I can't even remember now.
I can't remember. They change the rules so often. Who knows?
So what they're trying to do, obviously, gang, is they're trying to force more kick returns. That's what they want to happen. And, I seen somebody comment on this tweet, and it kind of caught me by surprise. I'm like, man, why didn't I think of that? Why not move the kicker back rather than have the touchback rule change? Move the kicker back 10 yards, and they're going to return the kicks, You want more points, there you go. But I don't know. It's just interesting to see how they attack that. Michael Lombardi heard rumors last year that they may change it mid-season. I didn't expect that to happen mid-season, and obviously it didn't. But we'll see, man. We'll see what happens as we move forward here with these touchbacks. So, what would you rather see, Tim? Would you rather see him just take it back to the original rule, or
Yep.
As the
go back, baby. Let's go back. Put the touchback to the 20. Where were kickoffs from? The 30? Used to kick off from the 30-yard line.
I don't know, man. I can't.
It's been changed so many times, and it's like it's getting to a point where it's like nobody knows the rules because they change every year. So, I don't know. I think the whole reason they started messing with the kickoffs in the first place was to try and protect some of the special teams players, and they were almost seemed like they were trying to discourage returns. And now it seems like, they want to see more returns. So, I'm an old school head, man. Take it back to 1990s rules, man. Let's go.
Yeah, and it can get a little convoluted. This is the way I understood the rule change. You guys correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. What they did was they closed the gap. That was what they wanted to do to prevent the injuries. Not prevent, but to lower the head injuries, right? Sure. Injuries in general. So that's why they've got them so close together. You remove that full speed, high speed contact, right? That was the whole purpose, was to make it safer, and they didn't want to take the kick return out of the game. That was the whole goal there. So it's like, okay, according to the league, and I'm not saying I agree with it, the statistics could show. I just really don't give a rat's ass enough about this type of stuff to dive into it, to be honest with you. Now, if you're talking about, is this cornerback lined up 8 inches further out to the left than he was the previous snap? That's in my wheelhouse. I love that stuff, seeing that slight strategery that goes on between the offense and the defense in those cat and mouse games. But when it comes to this, like, they wanted the returns to continue to happen, but they were trying to remove the high impact aspect of the play. So that's what they did, was they said, okay, you know what? If I remember correctly, they said, let's bring it out to the 30. So that would deter teams from kicking the ball into the end zone for a touchback. Well, what they didn't expect were teams to go, oh, heck with that. We're still going to kick it in the end zone. So now they're bringing it to 35 potentially. So they're going to keep doing it until teams stop kicking it through the end zone or into the end zone and they have to make it land in that landing zone, obviously. So as Deadfish says, isn't it less returns? I'd take it on the 35 every time. Yeah, right. But that's what they're trying. They're trying to keep the returns in the game. And that's why they're trying to penalize the kicking team for putting it there. So you're spot on there, Deadfish. Essentially what you're saying is, yeah, man, I would down in the end zone every time. That's what teams were doing even with the 30. Most of them were not even bringing it out.
But they also added in the fair catch on the kickoffs now. So as soon as that ball is up in the air, all the return teams got to do is say they want it on the 35.
Right.
Just
exactly.
fair catch every time.
Exactly.
And then I think, like you said, with the momentum of, like, these special teamers just running full speed, you can't move now until the ball's fielded by the return man, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to run down the field with the kicker like, back in the day. And it's a little bit different, but I don't know, man. Whatever they decide, I hope they just keep it and they make up their minds, and maybe we'll get more than 1 year in a row with the same rules.
Yeah, I never looked at the game like, we need to change it. To me, it always seemed like it was good enough. That's what frustrates me sometimes about the sports media is they try to make the stories about themselves. They try to make their content about themselves and draw these parallels of how I remember when this happened to me and that happened to me. And we try not to do that on this show much, although, obviously our childhood and the debacle that is our lives will get brought up from time to time. But, it's like the game is good enough the way it is. The problem was obviously the concussions. Let's call it like it is. And I watched Concussed today, that movie that Brett Favre was an executive producer on. Trying to think of who it was about. It was about a young DB from Iowa that played for the Giants. If you guys get a chance to watch that documentary, it's called Concussed. It's again, man, you guys know where I stand on it. I used to be one of those guys going, it's a man's sport. Let them hit, quit babying them and blah, blah, blah. And then you start seeing people take their lives, and it's like, okay, let me step back and reevaluate here. And man, the information that came out, that was just such a sad story to see a young man lose his life, because of a head trauma from a game of football. So I get why they're trying to do this. I get it. But I'm with you, Tim. I think I understand what you're saying. And like, let's just pick something and stick with it, for God's sake.
It's almost like, once they started tweaking with it, we've done so much that now we can't stop. It's like that. It's like adjusting a picture on the wall. You're trying to get it. Right. Just quit messing with it and it'll be fine. But, I think the more you touch it and tweak the rules, the more you're just going to constantly have to do it. But, one thing that we know for certain, change is a constant. So, if you're going to be resistant to change, you're going to be unhappy all the time. So kind of just comes with the territory,
Yeah, it really does. Chuck Jaggers in the chat says, Junior say I was sad, man. That was, pitiful story there too. It was just one of the all-time greats. Obviously, he was a part of my childhood growing up, watching him just lay people out, and obviously it caught up to him. So anyway, it's a sensitive subject in that regard. I understand the people that don't want the game to change at all. I get it, but at the same time, it's like, man, it's like the automobiles becoming safer as you get, as society moves along. Like, it's a good thing to try to protect people as much as you can. But anyway, let's move it along here. Didn't plan on getting to a CTE discussion here, but here we are. So let's see what else we got. Shedeur Sanders, we've been talking a lot about him here lately, Tim, right? And So here, this came out earlier today. Pro Football Talk had tweeted out Shedeur Sanders won't work out at the combine. I did a little digging and cross-check this with, listen, PFT can be a little bit clickbaity sometimes. PFT can be a very controversial site sometimes.
Yeah, it's ran by a Vikings fan, right? What do you expect?
Everybody's talking about this topic, and it is true. Here's what I gathered. Shedeur Sanders will not work out at the scouting combine. However, he does plan on throwing at Colorado's pro day, where his father, Deion Sanders, will oversee that event. Okay, and he'll have his receivers there, obviously. I imagine there's a good possibility that Travis Hunter will be there. He'll be throwing to him as well. But the big thing is he's going to be doing interviews this week. So you're still going to get the interviewing process with the scouts, with the GMs, all that good stuff from Shedeur Sanders. So I don't think this is a situation where that'll hurt his draft stock, to be honest with you. But he is – some project him as the top quarterback in the draft. Obviously, we've got him as the second best quarterback in the draft, and we got him in the 11th spot on our board as it sits right now. We'll see how that ends up. But Shedeur Sanders kind of taking the safe road here, Tim. And listen, I can't dog anybody for this. You know, you go out there and you trip, you fall in a couple of drills, or you, God forbid, you tear your knee up. I promise you this ain't happening. I promise you the NFL ain't going, oh, man, that sucks. Yeah, here, we'll still give you a guaranteed contract. It don't work like that. Now, they got insurance policies, I'm sure, to protect themselves, but they're paying out of the pocket for that. But anyway.
Yeah, and that, covered or not, losing your rookie season is, no fun. Ask J.J. McCarthy what that feels like. You don't want to lose that year, especially when you're one of the top recruits, in the group. So I'm not surprised by this at all, honestly, that he's not going to work out. And I know a lot of guys in this situation, justifiably so, they feel like, hey man, I've got enough on tape. You've seen me play. You've got access to my workouts. I'll do what I have to do. But, going full bore at the underwear Olympics and, tearing an ACL or something and ruining your year is not the route most of these guys want to go, especially guys that are in like the top 100, right?
Yeah, definitely. Deadfish says Shedeur Sanders should just run the 40 at the combine, then just run out of the stadium, just like his daddy did.
Just
right?
like his dad.
Heck of a story.
And jump in the limo and get on the private jet. Boom.
Yeah. He said didn't even stop. Just jumped right in the limo, right over to the airport. He was back to Atlanta, if I remember correctly.
Love it.
Or wherever he was living at the time. Deion's a hell of a character, man. I'll tell you. People either love him or they hate him, Tim. And there's nothing in between, dude. So
it's true.
Anyway, all right. So there you go with the Shedeur Sanders talking again. We're going to continue to mention that along with Cam Ward. Cam Ward, I think, has done himself some favors, though, man. He's just stayed quiet, hasn't he? He just stayed quiet, stayed out of the limelight. He can go out there, show off that arm, and hopefully cash in on a big check there. Caldwell Corner in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. He says, I think it makes more sense that we keep Ja, not even because I like him, but because I don't think there will be much of a market for him, and it's not worth only saving like $7 million and not have him. I agree, Caldwell. I do. It's kind of where I've been this whole process is like, okay, if you're saying we could free up $6 million, yeah, that's awesome. Whether you use it this year or roll it into next year, that's great. Any amount of money that you save is good. But the goal is to field the best team. Now, I know people immediately say, well, he hasn't been available. And that's a valid point. But you got to keep in mind, too, that when someone's hurt, they're losing out on a portion of that salary, right? And I don't know all the details into that. I just do know that there's a portion of the fan base that thinks we're paying him to be hurt, and that's just simply not the case. He is getting a portion of it. And you don't want a player to be hurt. Obviously, if you're tying up that kind of cap and you're building plans around a specific player, you want him to be there. But again, what it would take for me, Tim, is you got to make sure he's on the field as much as possible. If you can guarantee me, and nobody can guarantee this, you can guarantee me 12 games from Ja this year, I want him back. It ain't worth it for the $6 million. Now, if he's going to come out, play half the season, and have a bad attitude, get him out of here. I don't care if we were taking a $6 million cap hit. You know what I mean? Like a cap penalty. Get him out.
When's the trade deadline? Usually it's like week 7 or something, week 8, something like that. So, there's that possibility too, that they just stand pat, see how the year goes. And if it's more of the same, it's, you're trading them for a lower value pick, probably just to offload them, at that point.
And immediately when you have these type of conversations, you want to remove your personal bias. You want to remove, okay, here's what I think they should do. Here's what I want them to do. Here's what I don't want them to do. Pull that back and go, okay, what's precedent say? Well, you traded Preston Smith last year, right? A little bit of precedent there. You traded Russell Douglas the year before, if I remember correctly, or maybe 2 years or whatever it was. So there's a little bit of precedent there at the same position. So, I don't think that's far from the truth there, Tim. That could potentially happen, right? It could.
It could.
So, we'll see as we get a little closer. Again, if they restructure the deal, if they pop up in the next, 3 to 5 days and say Jaire Alexander has restructured his contract, it doesn't mean he's guaranteed to stay a Packer, but that's going to push me to like 75, 80%. He's going to be back with the Packers.
Yeah, I would think so too. They wouldn't restructure to try and move him. I don't think they would do that.
I don't either. I think they would just like to cut bait, absorb the dead cap, free up that $6 to $7 million and move it along. Coach Lynn says there's definitely a market for Josh still. There is a market, Coach. It's just, here's the deal. Like when you say there's a market, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good market, right? Like when you trade someone of Jaire Alexander's caliber, you would think, okay, this is a starting cornerback. Some would say a top 10 corner in the league when he's healthy, right? If you were saying, all right, you're going to trade a top 10 corner in the league, what would you like to get back for him? A 5th-round pick ain't it, Now, that might be all they can get for him, though. We got to accept the reality of what the market is. So I guess it just depends on, Coach, what what that market is. You know what I mean? If you got a 3rd-round pick, if they decide they wanted to part ways, you got a 3rd-round pick, I would feel pretty good about that. If they decide to part ways and they got a 5th-round pick, I'm feeling a little more like, damn, we probably mishandled this a little bit, type thing. So, but all right, there's your Jaire talk of the week. Actually, we're not done yet. Drew D coming in with the facts here. He says base salary equals game checks. Divide the base salary by 17 weeks and amount saved per game if they don't play. So what that means, guys, is when you look at the contract, you got all these different bonuses, right? You got proration, you got option, you got signing bonus, you got roster bonus, all that stuff. The roster bonus, if they make the club week 1, they get that full roster bonus. You can't get rid of that now, right? Any signing bonus you gave, you already wrote them a check for that. You can't get rid of that. So all that is guaranteed to them. That's what you're talking about, practical and actual guaranteed money. The base salary is like what Drew is saying here. Divide that by 17 is what you call game checks, or, they get a check every week. So however many games you miss, that's how much money you save. So to put that into perspective here, I'm going to pull it up real quick, Tim. You add anything you want to that real quick. I'm going to pull up Spot Track, and we'll talk about how much money you would save per game that he misses this year. We'll see if we can do the quick math.
Oh, I'll just let Ja tell it,
Things could be a lot worse. I could be a Bears fan.
Exactly. This one actually should be pretty easy. In 2025, his base salary is $16.1 million. Okay, so you're talking about a little less than $1 million a game that you free up in cap space. And I think Drew, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't that recalibrate the following year, if I remember correctly? So, well, I mean, I guess it does. It does technically go against the cap this year. It's tallying in real time, and then you roll that over. So, yeah, I answered my own question. So. He says if they're inactive, that's the other thing, right? Like if a player, they may play, they're active, they go out there like that one game. That's why I think it could be frustrating for a team too. You go out there, you try to go, you get 10 snaps. Okay, you couldn't even utilize him, and he got his game check. That's where things get a little bit tedious. Yeah. So that's how that would work. Now, when we're talking about restructuring, right? Restructuring the contract. We talk about, okay, you could give cash over cap, right? Play the cash over cap game, meaning if you get him to agree to a pay cut, but you guarantee a portion of that $16.1 million. Now, if he's hurt, doesn't matter as a signing bonus, right? However much you decided to convert there. Yep. And if you go, I think, who is it in the chat here? Just bring it up. Let me find it here. Here we go. Chris in. Clayton, what about a post-June 1 for Ja? Way better. Yeah. Drew, tell me what you think about the post-June 1. I've seen it. I've seen some people go at 50%. I've seen others go by however the contract's structured by the year. It just pushes it back a whole nother year, essentially. Like if we were to cut him before June 1 or trade him before June 1, that's where you're freeing up that roughly $6 million, right? But if you go post-June 1, Tim, what ends up happening is you kind of get to spread that out over 2 years. I don't know if the club gets to specifically choose how they want to spread that out or if there's a default that it resets to. But essentially what it comes down to is there's $19 million in dead cap this year, okay? So if you choose to go post-June 1, right, then I could see it being something where First of all, you've got to carry that $19 million dead cap or the entire cap. You got to carry that entire cap hit of $25.4 million until June 1, even though you're cutting them right then. Okay. But I believe the way it would work is that $19 million would be something like maybe, I don't know, maybe $11 million against the cap this year, and then the other $8 million next year. You know what I'm saying? It never seems like it's a 50-50 number there, where it's evenly distributed. But not sure if you got anything on that. Let's see what Drew D says here. You get the post June 1 is 1 year plus the rest of the contract. Otherwise, it's the rest of the contract all at once. You get the post June 1 is year 1 plus. Yeah, so that's exactly how we just described it. So essentially what it would be is the $19 million in dead cap. The way that would work is the $10.7 million dead cap would hit first, and then the remainder would hit. And it gets a little bit tricky with Ja because he's got a void year there in 2027 that's worth $2.3 million. So, again, there you go, Drew D. So if you have 4 years left, it's 1 year plus 3 years. In this case, it's 1 + 1. So, but yeah, there you go. Now we're done with the Ja talk. Let's move it along here. Our buddy Andy on Twitter, I think he's one of the best follows around Draft Time. If you guys get a chance, at CU Andy with 2 Y's. Here are his pre-combine top 5 interior D linemen. I'm assuming they are his. He didn't list a source for this. This is how he's got them listed. Mason Graham 1, Walter Nolan 2, Kenneth Grant 3, Derek Harmon 4, Alfred Collins 5. Tim, on the surface there, how do you feel about the order in which he has that? And I'm going to tell you how we've got it on our board.
On the surface, I would say I 100% agree with it. Just at first glance, I mean, there's some debate in there, obviously, but I mean, that's pretty much the 5. I know some people are kind of up and down with Alfred Collins, and I think everybody's kind of equally high on Walter Nolan. I know we don't have him super high on our board, right? Nolan.
He's fell a little bit, but he's in the 23 spot right
23.
now.
Okay, so top 50 guy. And then, of course, I mean, we've talked about Mason Graham and we've talked about Kenneth Grant a lot. But I'm pretty much on board with that list. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to go strictly off our board because you guys know I try not to dive into the tape and here's how I see a player. I really try to stay away from that stuff. Mason Graham, we've got him as our top defensive lineman as well. Number 2, we've got Kenneth Grant, and he's in the 15 spot, but he's a number 2 defensive lineman. He's got him at 3. So that we differ. Yep. And then our third best defensive lineman is Walter Nolan, who he has at second best. So we just kind of flipped Walter Nolan, right? And then fourth, we have the same fourth in Derek Harmon, who's in the same tier as Walter Nolan. He's just right behind him. And then Alfred Collins, I'm trying to see if we got another defensive lineman that's above him. We've actually got Tyleek Williams as our 5th best defensive lineman. And then Alfred Collins, who honestly they're just one tier apart, just about 5 points away from each other. He was the best guy around. So there we go. That's kind of how we have our defensive tackles stacking up to how Andy has his. I love to look at stuff like this and kind of cross-reference everything, you know what I mean? Yep. Get a differing opinion. And you guys know coming out of the gate, Walter Nolan was one of my top guys. And then as we build the board on out, you kind of look at it and go, okay, here's the way it's fallen now. Now, when you look at Kenneth Grant, let's focus on that main conversation. Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant? Let's explain why Kenneth Grant is higher than Walter Nolan on our board. All right. On the surface, just glancing at it here, Kenneth Grant in 2022 was the 296th graded defensive tackle. Walter Nolan was the 368th. All right. In 23, Kenneth Grant jumped all the way to 48th. Walter Nolan jumped to 199. But in 24, Kenneth Grant jumped to 29th. Walter Nolan passed him up at 8. So essentially what you've got is he's going to get a better average out here from the two highest PFF graded years that he had, he being Kenneth Grant, than Walter Nolan, although Walter Nolan had a better year this year, according to PFF, than Kenneth Grant. Okay. The PFF big board had Kenneth Grant at 18 at season's end. They had Walter Nolan at 33. The consensus big board had Kenneth Grant at 21. They had Walter Nolan at 27. And Another change here that kind of helped Walter Nolan a little bit, and Kenneth Grant didn't get the bonus, was Walter Nolan got the Senior Bowl bonus from Daniel Jeremiah.
That's right.
So that helps a little bit too, kind of close that gap. Remember, we thought he was significantly lower. Well, that -5 jumped him up a tier, and obviously that helps. Now, Daniel Jeremiah's big board had Kenneth Grant at 18. He had Walter Nolan at 26. So DJ definitely agrees with us in that regard. Kyle Krabs at the 33rd team, which, by the way, this is going to be Kyle Krabs' last year at the 33rd team. It's what I heard earlier, a little rumor circulating. I think it's true. I need to get it confirmed. So he's going to be moving on to do something else. So that means 33rd team might have their sights on an even bigger name to come in and be their draft guy. But anyway, 33rd team Kyle Krabs had Kenneth Grant 12th. He had Walter Nolan 35th. All right. So obviously he agrees with us there. As well, with Kenneth Grant being over Walter Nolan. And then Dane Brugler had Kenneth Grant at 26, and he had Walter Nolan at 29. So really it's across the board. If you were to remove the PFF grades, right, and the PFF big board and the consensus big board and said just Daniel Jeremiah, Kyle Krabs, and Dane Brugler, they all see Kenneth Grant as better than Walter Nolan. But again, this isn't a shot at Andy. That's why I like these differing opinions. He sees something in Walter Nolan, and he thinks Walter Nolan's better than Kenneth Grant. Remember that if Walter Nolan ends up being a stud, let's make sure we go back and put some spec on Andy's name because he's seen it. He called it. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, they're both going to be studs, I think. You want to give yourself a headache, just do a comparison between these two guys. You know what I mean? Just looking even at just the tail of the tape. They're both 21, barely 21, 6'3", 300-plus pounds. 3 techs like we talked about, pretty good, pretty similar and comparable skill sets. And I don't think it's a question of, who's going to be a stud and who's not. I think they're both going to be studs. The question is where are they going to get drafted, in which order. So it is cool to just see different perspective from, other people that are kind of breaking this down because, side by side, it depends on who you're looking at. You could go either way. Walter Nolan has moved up and down. And so is Kenneth Grant. And I think we've got a lot of time between now and the draft. You never know. It'd be interesting to see what the mocks and the boards look like as we get closer to end of April.
Definitely. J. Cole says, I finally saw where that he was the best guy around drop came from. Hilarious. And everybody's asking where from. I'm trying to see if he got it right here. J. Cole said, I looked it up on YouTube. It was a news station interviewing a guy. That's right. Yeah. And he said the guy was talking about John Gotti. You guys know who
forget about it.
You guys know who the Teflon Don was? John Gotti. He was. Well, I could give you guys. I love my best guy around. I won't go too in depth here, but John Gotti was actually a mob boss for the Gambino family, and he knocked off Paul Castellano in front of Spark Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, and that's how he became the leader of the Gambino family. All right, that's how we got to this point. Now, when he ended up getting arrested for, I believe, much like Capone, I want to say they linked him to tax evasion and stuff first, and
Rico
then they
charge, right?
Yeah,
hearing or something. Yep.
Yeah, and then so when they were going around Little Italy, as my buddy Sean Antonino calls it, I call it Italy. He says, no, it's Italy. That's how you say it. It's Italy. So they were going around Little Italy interviewing people in the neighborhood, like, what do you think about John Gotti, right? And he said, he said, he was the best guy around. And they said, what about the people he murdered? What murder? It's like, yeah, this dude, he had Paul Castellano whacked right in front of the steakhouse on the curb. And this guy's going, he's the best guy around. Absolutely awesome. Oh, man. A-Fam says Clayton should do Mafia podcast. Yeah, could you imagine me do a Mafia podcast in this redneck voice? Oh, my God. Somebody put a hit out on me. You'd hear somebody knock on the door one night right here at the studio.
Oh, and we'd all be saying,
he was the best guy around.
What accent? All right, next one here from Andy. I love this type of stuff, man. He says pre-combine top 5 edge rushers. All right, he's got Abdul Carter number 1. We have him number 1. He's number 2 overall, only behind Travis Hunter. So we agree there. The number 2 edge defender, he has Mike Green, and we have James Pierce Jr. Okay. big discrepancy there, Tim, right?
Yeah.
Big discrepancy. And then next, I have Mike Green at number 3. He has Shamar Stewart. We have Shamar Stewart at number 4. All right. And he has Mikael Williams at 4, which we have at number 5. Okay. And then, of course, he's got James Pierce Jr. at number 5. So the big difference there, Tim, and it's a pretty big difference. We got James Pierce as the second best edge defender. And I'd love to know why he's highlighted in purple there. I need to ask Andy that. There's got to be a reason he had, because he had a couple of the D tackles highlighted in purple as well, right? Derek Harmon and Alfred Collins. But, yeah, so we see James Pierce Jr. a lot higher than Andy does, obviously. And when we look at that, James Pierce Jr. did not have a grade in 2022, okay? No big deal. In 2023, he was the 12th highest graded edge rusher in college football. Last year, he was the 28th best. The PFF Big Board had him at 29 at the end of the season. The Consensus Big Board had him at 13. Daniel Jeremiah has him at 20. 33rd team had him at 13, and Dane Brugler had him at 21. So if we were to just go off of Daniel Jeremiah here, he has James Pierce Jr. at number 20 overall. And where would he have – where's our boy? Who do you have? Mike Green, second.
Yeah.
Daniel Jeremiah has Mike Green at 23rd. So Daniel Jeremiah would agree with our board overall, as opposed to –
Where do we have Shamar Stewart on our board?
Shamar Stewart, I think he's 5th. Let me count him one more time here. So we got Abdul Carter 1, okay? We got James Pierce Jr. 2, Mike Green 3, Shamar Stewart 4th. Shamar Stewart is 4th on our board. Okay. And then Mikael Williams from Georgia. So,
and then where's my boy Jack Sawyer? Where's he at? He's got to be up there somewhere on our board.
Jack Sawyer dropped a little bit. He dropped because of all of DJ, Kyle Krabs, and Dane Brugler. You guys remember we were real high on him. Why were we high on him? 223rd in 22. Then he jumped all the way to 18 in 23. Then he jumped all the way to 7 this year in 2024. PFF Big Board had him at 21. Consensus Big Board had him at 39, right? But then Daniel Jeremiah had him at 40. He ends up in the 39 spot on our board. 33rd team Kyle Krabs had him at 75th. That's probably what hurt the most there, Tim, with Jack Sawyer, is Kyle Krabs. Because Dane Brugler's got him at 44. So, yeah, and again, it doesn't matter what we've got on him. You know, what our board says. It's what does Goody may have him higher than James Pierce. You know, that could be the case. Yeah. But I don't know, man. He's one of those dudes. If we took him with 23, I wouldn't be mad, because there's enough info in our board to suggest, hey, if you remove Kyle Krabs' opinion of him, he's worth the 23rd pick. No problem.
Yeah. You know?
So, and I know there's a lot of people in here that hate Ohio State. Believe me, I felt the wrath of it on Twitter when I put a tweet out about Jack Sawyer. They came at me big time. So, yeah.
That guy is pure pass rush, though. You know, a lot of Packer fans complaining about the lack of the pass rush. I mean, he seemed. I mean, just looking at the stats, I'm just doing a little glance. I mean, 10 sacks, 16 hits, 38 hurries. I mean, the guy is just. That's what he does. He goes after quarterbacks. You know. So it depends on where you put that on your priority list if you're Brian Gutekunst, right? So we'll see.
Yep. So there you go. Anything else you want to add to the edge defender talk there, Tim? Anything? Is there a name not on this top 5 list that you think could creep up in your top 5, or do you feel like, you know, both our board that we just covered and, of course, Andy here, see you, Andy, on Twitter, what he's got here? Do you think we covered it?
I think we covered it pretty well. The kid out of A&M, that Nick Scorton, I don't know if he's going to move up. That would be one, maybe, potentially.
Yeah, and we've got – I know you mentioned Jack Sawyer. We've got Nick Scorton right above Jack Sawyer. We've actually got him in the 37 spot. Yeah. And we got Landon Jackson above him from Arkansas in the 32 spot. So
Arkansas, we talked about him. That guy's a monster too. 6'7", 280. Whew.
There's a lot of edge defenders here. Like, yeah, I mean, in the top 50, in our 50, there's one. Let me see if I can count them off without missing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's wild. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 edge defenders in our top 50.
Yep.
So there's going to be a run on those guys in the first 2 rounds. There's no two ways about it. It's too important of a position, man.
What's the other dude from Ole Miss too? Umana Milan, Princely Umana Milan.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that might, possibly move up. We'll see.
We got him in the 54 spot, so but it's not above possibility for him to creep into the top 50 for sure by the time everything's over. Here's the thing. He's got a 51.4 grade. If he scores a 9+ RAS, he's getting a 5-point bonus from us. And by the way, the Packers have shown interest in him. They met with him, so which is something we probably should have covered there as we went through those specific players. Kenneth Grant, the Packers met with. Walter Nolan, the Packers met with. And you just mentioned Princely. Yep. Princely, the Packers met with as well at Ole Miss. So, all right, there you go.
So Edge is definitely on the radar for sure. It's just a matter of when he's thinking of possibly drafting one.
Yeah, and don't be surprised if he goes edge and then they move Gary or LVN, start kicking them inside a little bit more. Maybe not predominantly, but a little bit more, because Gary's run defense this year, boys, I'm telling you, there's not enough people talking about it. There isn't.
Yep.
I mean, it just absolutely, had a great year against the run. No doubt about it. Here, speaking of Kenneth Grant, this is Andy put this tweet out here as well. Kind of hard to see. I don't want to get too aggressive here. We've been getting hit with copyright stuff from 6 months ago, guys, so it never ends. But this is just a quick clip of Kenneth Grant here. It says, Kenneth Grant's another guy continuing to grow on me every day. 6'3", 342 with excellent power and athleticism. He's going to test very well at the combine. Could even spring himself into the top 10 conversation with defensive line needy teams. You see his burst there, Tim. Quickness, man. Coming across, absolutely. Quick shed, great play. So
love to see it.
Yeah, got to keep an eye on it. Now, speaking of run defenders, I wanted to hit this. I was in here earlier. I was cooking dinner, man. We had some risotto. Risotto.
Nice.
We had some of that. I was redneck chefing it up down there in the kitchen earlier, man. I had a documentary on Noah's Ark where they think they found it in Turkey. I've been studying that. I got a cold bruschetta cracked open, making some chicken. What was it called, Tim?
Risotto? Yeah, risotto.
Yeah, sounds like what I read down there. I just threw the box in the trash. And forget the instructions. We'll figure this out as we go. You know what I mean? But anyway, I was going, man, run defense isn't getting talked about enough. What happened this year? And I thought maybe the best way to approach this is let's see who is the most effective at each level of the defense in stopping the run. So we went with stops. And just so everybody knows what a stop is, I've talked about it a lot. And I always say run stop because 90% of that stat is a run stop, right? But a stop is on NFL Pro is a tackle that results in a successful play for the defense, which means negative EPA for that particular play. So the guy who made the tackle, okay, on a defensive play, obviously, that resulted in a negative EPA, that's what they consider a stop. So I love that because tackles, you can get a guy that's got a crap ton of tackles and they're making the tackles 12 yards down the field and it still counts as a tackle. You look up, oh, he had 12 tackles on the day and it looks like he had a good day. And you look up and go, how in the hell? Hold up. Well, he was the only one doing his job then because they rushed for $140. No, not necessarily, right? If you're tackling the ball carrier 12 yards down the field, 8 yards down the field, hell, even 6 yards down the field, that's a negative play for the defense. So here is J. Cole going to get me started on this arc. See, this is how we get sidetracked. Ain't going to do it, Tim. Ain't going to take the bait.
Man, we went all the way from the Italian mob to Noah's Ark and back.
What you just did was you took a tour of this crazy noggin of mine, right? There's stuff always going on up there.
What conspiracy?
That's right. Now somebody needs to use Grok or some other Gemini or something and create me an image of John Gotti standing on Noah's Ark. That's what I need. And I'm going to have it framed and put right back here on the wall. That's what we got to have. All right, so I said the Green Bay Packers run defense went from 25th in 2023 to 2nd in 2024. That was yards per carry, guys. So this is yards per rush attempt, all right? They went from 25th in the league all the way to 2nd. The only team that had a lower yards per carry allowed in the entire National Football League was the Baltimore Ravens, okay? Now, why did that happen? This is what we did. I did it by total stops, but I also mentioned the percentage, and I tried to find a player from each level. Now, I since edited this because obviously Rashawn Gary's an edge defender. I ended up editing it to edge. And then we included Kenny Clark as well because he led the team at interior defensive tackle in run stops. And we need to mention that because I've dogged on Gary as much as anyone. His pass rush was horrible this year. But again, we pointed out all year doing a lot of touch spying. They were really keen in on stopping the run. He did lead the interior defensive lineman in run stops. And someone had actually hit me. I think it was Carlos Silva in another chat there on X hit me up and said, didn't TJ Slayton have a higher stop percentage? He didn't. They both had 11%. But TJ Slayton had a 2% higher pressure rate than Kenny Clark. So he was more effective rushing the passer, okay, in that regard. But anyway, Edgerrin Cooper, rookie linebacker, Tim, led the team in stops with 47 stops and a run stop percentage, or stop percentage, I should say, 26%, Tim. 26% of the run snaps he had a run stop on. That is insanity, dude. That's
so in other words, he
was the best guy around.
That's exactly right. What rushing yards? So second on this list. Now that was the linebacker that really popped, right? That was the linebacker that was like, okay, that's our leading run stopper right there. At the edge defensive position, right? Rashawn Gary, 39 stops at 18%. That was the second highest run stop percentage on the entire team from that standpoint, from the defensive line standpoint, I should say. Okay. Next, Tim, this one surprised me even more so than strong safety or box safety. I'm sorry. He played center field too, but he played a lot of slot corner, was Javon Bullard. But even ahead of him, right? Keyshawn Nixon had to kick outside a lot. He still had 10% stop rate, 36 run stops this year, Keyshawn Nixon. Now, again, we talked about his yards per target allowed was pretty darn good, right? I think I've got so many notes here. 6.1 yards per target allowed for Keyshawn Nixon, okay? And to put that into perspective, that was the best on the team amongst our cornerbacks. Even Jaire. Jaire allowed 8.1 yards per target, by the way. But Keyshawn Nixon's passer rating when targeted was 101.2 because he gave up those 6 touchdowns, right? And, of course, Jaire Alexander's was passer rating allowed 77.6, and the best on the team was actually Carrington Valentine at 69.0. But Keyshawn Nixon was hands down our best run defending corner on the team. And I think that's worth mentioning because he didn't play the entire year in the slot. It wasn't like he was just getting these cheap in the slot. Dude balled out off the edge, off the boundary there as well. And Tim, Javon Bullard, not great in coverage. We know that. We talked about it. We've seen it, right? But boy, oh boy, 31 stops with a 10% run stop percentage. And I put safety in there, but obviously he ended up playing slot corner a good portion of the year too. I think Javon Bullard's going to be fine. I think they're going to get him in there in the offseason and work on that coverage. Yeah. And I think you're going to see him take a step forward. Listen, you can teach a guy to cover, maybe not at an elite level, but you can improve that. If a guy's not willing to put his nose in there and tackle, there's not much you can do.
There ain't much you can do. Yep.
Yeah. I thought
we knew that about Bullard when we drafted him, right? We knew coverage was not his strong suit, but we knew he was a hell of a tackler and had the ability to play in the slot, and that's what he did for us.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Keyshawn, I think of all those chalk talks we did last season and just pointing out these plays where, Nixon, whether it's boundary or rotating to the slot, man, he showed up in the run fits big time. I laugh every time these teams try to throw a little swing pass out to the flat and thinking you're fooling Keyshawn Nixon out there. You're not. You're getting bulldozed right away.
If they do a smoke screen too, the way he'll just attack
it. Yep. Yeah. I love it.
Him and Bullard are kind of cut from the same cloth there for sure. Yep. And Xavier McKinney patrolling the safety position, sugaring down in the box and then dropping in a deep half or whatever, just crazy. And then of course you had the Tampa 2 call where he sugared the middle field closed, went to his Tampa 2 half, and then came back across the seam and picked the ball off. It's like, I think that was against the Eagles week 1.
That's a field tilter on the defensive side for sure. When you got a guy who can literally be everywhere on that field on a play, it allows other guys like this to free up and do what they do best. That's why this defense continues to improve.
Yeah. And then, of course, Kenny Clark, 28 stops, 11% run stop percentage there. When you take that into account with the pass rush, and I know the pass rush wasn't pretty, if we didn't see all of those touch spies, I would be a lot harder on Kenny. I'd be like dug in big time. You guys know I've probably been tougher on Kenny than any other podcaster. I don't know another podcaster that's talked negative about Kenny more than I have. Not as a person, not as a leader, but simply as what's happened on the football field. When you take that run stop percentage into effect and you mix and match it with the fact that they were using touch spies and occupying a double team when they were only really bringing a 3-man rush, that's I say you keep them this year. Next year is probably the year you move, because we're talking like it doesn't make sense unless you go post June 1 this year. With all that being said and his cap number dropping this year, because I want to say it went from like 27 down to $20 million cap hit. Let's keep him there. Let's still go get that 3-tech we're talking about and hope that 3-tech can beat him out or beat Wyatt out or beat whoever. If you have Kenneth Grant drop to you at 23 and you pull the trigger and take that guy, I want him to bust his ass and beat both of those guys out for any and every rep he can get, whether it's 3-tech, 1-tech. And by the way, of these top defensive tackles we mentioned, Tim, he's the one who had the most A-gap lineup, right? Alignment, which is obviously 1-tech. So he's got a little more versatility than the other guys in that regard. So,
yep, I would agree.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this top run defenders here kind of hit here? Man, I thought this was cool. I thought, again, cooking dinner, trying to think, that might be the best way to look at it. Let's see who played the best at each level there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to give credit to these guys too, right? We can't go without giving some props to Tupac LaFleur and Shug Hafley over there, man. Especially it's awesome just to see the turnaround we had. And it's evident in the fact that our defensive staff got picked through here during the hiring process, and we lost a few guys. So, hey, we're trending in the right direction. It's awesome that Half is here for another season, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the staff shapes up and, going in with year 2 in this 43 with Coach Hafley.
Yeah. Ben Holden in the chat said, draft the 3-tech and put Kenny back at nose. Here's what's wild, Ben. And this is, I'm not calling you out. This is many, many people make this same mistake. Kenny played 1-tech. I'm talking about, we'd have to go watch the tape and look at the actual alignment. I would say 90% of his snaps was 1-tech. He played nose this year. That's what he did. That's what surprised us because we were like, man, you throw him to a 3-tech, let Kenny eat. But they put him at the 1-tech and let him eat double teams. So he played nose, right? And when you say nose, some people go, no, nose is 0 to shade, Clayton. It's not a 1-tech. I disagree. The closest to 0 is the nose in my opinion. If you've got 2 interior defensive tackles, right, and you got 1 in a 3 and 1 in a 1, or 1 in a 2-eye and 1 in a 4-eye, right, the one closest to 0 is going to be your nose. So he actually played what we would consider nose tackle or the closest thing to it this year. So, and I'm sure you could find the actual alignment. We could cross-check it and everything. Again, Tim, I don't remember many times where we watched tape and we were like, yeah, here's Kenny in a 3. It was most of the time Kenny was in that 1 with that touch spot, right?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
But I agree with the first part still draft a 3-tech.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because, again, man, you know, the 3-tech should be that dude that when we say draft a 3-tech, if you get a 3-tech, a dominant 3-tech, and listen, this is easier said than done. Like Michael Lombardi said, everybody thinks they got a 3-tech and nobody has a 3-tech, right? Yep. If you go get a 3-tech that does the thing, and no worry, Ben, I'm with you, man. Hey, he says I'm defensive position illiterate. It's tough too because all it takes is one shift and the line shifts over. Now you're going 2 seconds ago before they shifted, you're thinking 1-tech, and now he's a 3-tech, and you got to really dive into that stuff and pay attention. And I
imagine being the quarterback on the other side of the line looking at that. Now he's wondering what the hell's going to happen.
Right, yeah, but no worries, Ben, no worries. So if you go get that true 3-tech, think of all those times that they double team Kenny and they just ran a touch spot. What I think, me personally, I think the way Hafley approached that was put Kenny in the 1-tech and force the center and the guard to double him. And when they do that, Kenny, don't give up your rush integrity. Like, just engage and keep your eye in the backfield. If they throw a double team at you, they're going to probably take you out of the play. I mean, yeah, we think you can beat double teams from time to time, absolutely. But if they take you out of the play, then why not you occupy 2 players, therefore giving you a +1 hat count on the call, and then covering a rush lane so the quarterback can't scramble. So Tommy DeVito doesn't happen again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or allowing you to key in a little bit more on the rush lanes from the running back. By the way, 28 stops, 11%. All this lines up with what we were talking about. But if you put a dominant 3-tech in there, Tim, there's going to be times that if he starts eating, if that 3-tech, if you draft Kenneth Grant, listen, Kenneth Grant may suck. He may end up being the worst defensive tackle of this draft. That could happen. Nobody's saying he's a slam dunk. We're just using him as the example as he's the highest on our board that could potentially fall to 23. But let's say you draft Kenneth Grant, and he's just eating that right guard's lunch. And they have to go, you know what? I know he's in a 3, and we got a 1 here with Kenny. What we're going to do, right guard, make sure you take the outside shoulder of Kenneth Grant. Center, you get the inside shoulder and give him some help there. Now, guess what happens? If that was the alignment, I promise you Kenny wouldn't be sitting there hand fighting playing touch spot.
No, he's going after the quarterback. Yep.
Bingo. So I think that's what could come into play there when you talk about drafting a dominant 3-tech, So Chuck Jaggers, Kenny Clark's still good in Madden, so I'm okay. There you go. That's all that matters.
I love it.
All right, let's see what else we got. I think we already, that was the edit there, so we're good there. Yeah, we're all caught up. Cool. I just got one thing in the Patreon group I want to hit on here, Tim. Might be a little rant with this, but and then we'll get out of here, man. So this came in for our Patreon in our prospects section, which is okay. It's still kind of pertaining to prospects. I'll read this, Tim, and I want to get your take on it too, because excuse my language, but my bullshit meter went off full blown on this right here. I ain't gonna lie to you. Greg S. said one thing the PFF draft experts explained why sometimes there's a discrepancy between a player's positional draft ranking versus their positional season ranking. Okay. So time out. What are they talking about? In my opinion, you correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. It sounds like they're talking about what we were mentioning. Like, how is this dude so high on the PFF big board, but he was graded so low last year? You know what I mean? Okay. And he goes on to say, he used Joshua Farmer, defensive tackle from FSU, as an example. These are a few reasons why this happens. The player was on a college bad team, and the opposing team could key in on them, or they were being asked to do too much to overcome the lack of surrounding talent. That sounds like an excuse. The player wasn't being used to their strengths. Possible bad coaching or the scheme responsibilities doesn't match up with what the player is great at. Tough. I can't say that on the air. Tough luck. You know how many players have to deal with that? You know what I'm saying? Yep. It says when PFF believes these issues will be resolved when the player is in the NFL, hence the higher projected draft ranking. I guess you can reverse this logic for players whose draft position is lower than their seasonal ranking. The surrounding talent on their college team makes them seem better than they really are. And I call BS on this because to me, it just looks like excuses. It looks like a way for PFF. And listen, you guys know I use PFF all the time. I think it's important. I think it's a great tool. But this is why I say it's not everything. If you're just going to go by this explanation here, and this isn't a shot at Greg S. Thank you so much for sharing this, Greg S., because it's them trying to explain why this happens. If that's your reasoning behind it, then what you're saying is your scoring system's flawed. If they're double teaming a guy and you're giving them a negative grade because they're getting on in a double team, that's on you, bub. There is nobody in the league that coaches that looks at a player that gets double teamed and they just ate up a +1 hat count and they're going to get a negative grade. That's silly. That's just crazy. So that's an excuse right there. And then the whole bad coaching, they were misused. How do you know if they were misused? You're not in the meeting room. You're not in there with the coaches. You're not in the spring game, pre-spring game, post-spring game, training camp, seeing where these players may or not fit into your defensive scheme.
You're probably not watching tape either.
You have none of that information, Tim. None of it. And you're just going, well, we think they misused them. Boy, get off your high horse because you guys are thinking way, way too highly of yourself if you think you understand how a player should be used more than a coach who's putting in probably 15-hour days.
Yep.
Ask Coach Lynn.
6 days a week. 6 or 7 days a week, yeah.
And you got some knucklehead out of shape like me sitting behind a keyboard going, I think they misused him.
Yeah.
Get away
And that's
from
how you get Joshua Farmer, 63 grade, 555th best out of 895 D linemen, and he's 57th overall on their board.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm not saying you give him a +2 when he eats a double team, but if you're giving him a -2 and he's eating a double team, you guys have got some serious issues.
You got to balance it out, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it's important, like with our draft board, when we look at Joshua Farmer, I'm going to pull him up real quick, not on the screen, but I'll tell you guys where we got him. It's why all of this context matters, right? We've got him in the 192 spot. So 318th in 22, 760th in 23, 571st in 24. PFF Big Board had him at 124 at the end of the season, okay? And Kyle Krabs did not have him in the top 100. Dane Brugler had him at 88. Daniel Jeremiah has him at 39, okay? So they had him at 124 on their Big Board is where they had him, Tim. And he was the 571st graded defensive tackle in football. Here's what I would do if I was PFF. I wouldn't make up I want to say it again so bad. I wouldn't make up a BS excuse as to why your numbers aren't lining up. I'd go back and regrade that tape is what I would do.
Yep.
And go, okay, let's look at this from a realist. Since he is being misused, if he's being misused, what does that mean? That's my question to them. What does being misused look like on tape? Because
the only thing I could think of would be like you got him out of position, right? You got a D tackle playing linebacker or something, or you know what I mean? That's it.
And that's an extreme, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and it'd be extremely obvious, right? You'd know. You got a guy that should be a running back playing tight end or something, or But that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, me personally, this sounds like PFF got caught with their pants down.
Yep.
And this right here looks like some crap you'd see in Washington, D.C. right here, boys, with a politician. You know what I mean? That's what that looks like. That right there looks like.
And again, from PFF's end, not from Greg's end here.
Exactly.
Sure.
And Greg, thank you so much, Greg, for sharing this, man, because we've been looking for this type of information. You know what I mean? Like, what the heck's – that's their explanation. We asked for it, Tim. Here I am mad about it, right? So I've got to chill on that. But
yeah, we're not going to shoot the messenger, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
He was the best guy around.
Yeah, so it's just I don't know. It seems very, very weird. Very weird, But anyway, that's it. Anything else you got, Tim? Anything else you got at all, bro?
No, I mean, one day we'll crack the mystery of PFF, right? Someday.
Somebody might.
Somebody might.
It's wild.
Whoever it is, we're going to give them a medal for sure.
I mean, like when it was Aaron Jones rushing for over 5 yards a pop and our run blocking grades were horrible, I'm going, how does it run? I guess Aaron Jones is doing amazing things. And then Josh Jacobs comes in and he runs absolutely wild, has a better year than Aaron Jones, right? Not yards per carry, but you get what I'm saying.
Yep.
And the run blocking still down. It's like, hold up a minute. Maybe you guys, call me crazy, maybe you guys don't understand what the actual play call is on that specific running play. And that's why you're giving, it'll look like, man, that offensive lineman really let that guy blow by him, but he's indeed letting him wash out of the play because it's a pin and pull, something like that. So could be a little bit of that. So
I agree.
Yeah. Chuck Jaggers PFF got a bunch of ex-Madden players on staff. They could. I don't know, dude. I don't know. Yeah, it's it's frustrating because my personality is like very. I need to figure this out. Well, I just told you the documentaries I'm listening to. Yeah. Going from the Italian mob to Noah's Ark, trying to figure out what happened throughout history, right? So I'm very like, give me the facts. Let's figure this out. Well, it's not that simple. Yes, it is. Everything's that simple. There's got to be an answer. And I know I'm being a little bit, sarcastic there. Sometimes the lines are way blurrier than I want them to be, man. So,
it's true.
Let's see here. Ben Holden, I wait for the chalk talk, and then I will look at the RAS score, compare defensive tackles to Aaron Donald, compare cornerbacks versus Jaire. Hey, that's not a bad way of looking at it, man. Comparing great to great. Trying to find those transparent. Yep. All right, Bob. Tim, that's it, man. Anything else?
No, that's all I got. We're almost there. We're 2 months away from the draft, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm so excited, man. I'm calling tomorrow. I got a call appointment set up with the guy at Lambeau to see what our options are going to be for the potential group stadium tour. We'll get on that and obviously, get all that stuff squared away and give you guys an idea of, okay, here's what we think we can do. And we'll have to get organized. And obviously, in a perfect world, we could set up a block and everybody just call in and get their own ticket. That would be great.
Right.
Rather than me having to collect money for a group and then try to. I feel weird about that stuff because believe me, I'm as skeptical as anyone. I don't like that whole collecting money for a group thing. So look at this last question right here. Chuck Jaggers, question of the night: Power Rangers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Tim, go.
Oh man, I'm an 80s baby, man, like you. I mean, I'm Ninja Turtles all day. Come on now.
Yeah. I remember when the Power Rangers came along, I was like, it's a little fruity for me. Give me Raphael with the size and Michelangelo eating some pizza.
I can see the 90s babies being Power Rangers kids, but I'm rolling with the Ninja Turtles all day.
Me as a kid, though, honestly, I don't know why Dalton isn't on there for Roadhouse. That was my childhood viewing. There was Dad making me watch Dances with Wolves and like I said, Roadhouse with the original Patrick Swayze. So
J. Cole.
They did, didn't they, Jay? Power Rangers got their ass whooped for 80% of the episode, and then they brung out that big robot at the end and took care of business. Let's be honest here, Tim. They got their big brother to come in and do the building. I mean,
I love it.
I guess the whole point was they came together and overcame, right?
Yeah, of course.
I remember people younger than me watching that. I'm going, what is this stupid crap? What is this? They ain't even hitting them. Like,
yeah. See, that's why I relate more to the Ninja Turtles, you know? That's all about just kicking ass and eating pizza, you know?
That's it, dude.
What you want to do when you're a young, growing boy, right?
Exactly. I'm going to run up to the house and get this VHS and show y'all a clip of Dalton ripping a dude's throat out. Y'all over here fake slap chopping and stuff. Get away from me. But anyway, this show sucks.
Drew, the Power Rangers taught kids bad strategy.
I bet, Drew, I would just about guarantee you people that work at PFF watch Power Rangers.
They were Power Ranger fans.
There you go. This show sucks. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate you.
And we go. We out.
Bye, guys.